Okay, let's call sorry, Jen. The town council meeting to order for June 24, 2025. Jennifer, will you take roll?
Councilmember Alberish,
Here.
Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Gold,
Here.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Here. Councilmember Brown, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. You, Dick. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the council on any item not on the scheduled agenda here are invited to do so. Please note that the council is not able to undertake extended discussions or to act on non-agendized items. Such items can be referred to staff for a deeper look or appropriate action on a future agenda. The communication period is limited to 5 persons, 3 minutes each. Anyone else can be heard at the end of regular business. Is there anyone here that would like to? Hello, Ms. Paletti.
Hi, I'm Sue Paletti, and I know you're all aware that I'm interested in serving on the CAC. I bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise and experience that I've noted in my application, which I believe would be valuable to the team. I'm here tonight because it's my understanding that in the July 8th meeting, you're going to be selecting the committee members, and I'm unable to attend that meeting. So I'm just standing here tonight to say, if you miss me in the meeting next time, please know that I am eager to serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. I really appreciate that. Any other members of the public? All right, everything worked out. Anyone else? Oh, I see David Middleman in the Zoom room. David?
Hi, this is actually his wife, Kristen. I am co-opting my husband's computer. So I wanted to say a couple things. The first is that I know that this project is ongoing, but the intersection of Portola and Sand Hill roads, the redesign and is ongoing, but you know, I don't know where that is. Perhaps I should be attending more circulation committee meetings, but you know, just in the past couple weeks, there has been 3 accidents that I happened upon. 2 were, one was car on car, one was car and bicycle. Both of those were narrowly avoiding each other. And the third was unfortunately an impact of car with motorcycle. And it just highlighted to me, I mean, what are the odds that I happen to be there when these 3 accidents happen? And it really highlighted that intersection is, continues to be a hazard to people's lives. The second thing I wanted to bring to the council's attention is I recall from previous discussion that there was discussion of increasing rebate matching funds for fire hazard mitigation. I don't know if that has gone any farther. I don't know if that was necessarily limited by a lack of funds or to certain properties, but I would ask that perhaps the council can look into that again. If I recall, it was increasing the matching funds from $3,000 a year to $6,000 a year. Anything would help. We live in the Western Hills and, it ain't cheap, unfortunately, to do tree work. And we do our part, we do it every year, we max it out, but we could certainly be doing more. So thank you for considering that.
Thank you, Kristen. Before I hand it off perhaps to Yaz to give us a little bit of an update on and Sand Hill Road, I'll just say we have been out on the road trying to find funding to do just what you're talking about, increasing the fire mitigation funds. In some of those conversations, part of the pushback we received, it has to be sort of around specific need, and that actually did lead to a discussion about whether the Western Hills could be potentially able to get more matching funds than the rest of the town, and that might be something that some federal or county agency or state agency might be interested in funding. To date, we have not been successful in getting any of that funding, but your point is well taken. And Yaz, you have anything to say on the road?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. That project is actually County of San Mateo project, but I'll be happy to follow up with them and, ask for them to kind of get into it a little bit more in terms of safety and traffic control.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. I guess we'll move on then to town manager. We'll close public comment, move on to town manager report. Jason?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Woodside Town Council. This is Jason Ledbetter, the town manager. So I have a few items to go over with you today. The sheriff's contract, unfortunately, is still not solidified, as the Sheriff's Administration Department has been in contact with me and is attempting to schedule the meeting still. It may be time to take a different approach at this point in our engagement with the office. The budget for approval this evening does have contingencies to deal with the escalation of costs that we're anticipating, but we're still ultimately attempting to get a negotiation. I have had email back and forth this week, but nothing is solidified on the calendar. I attended a meet and greet at Bucks on Tuesday, June 17th with Councilmember Wall and members of District 1 that went really well. I continue to schedule and meet members of the community interested in discussing town business. The concerns range from the housing element to vegetation removal and fire danger, into road and pedestrian safety, and opinions on the town center area plan or joining the CAC. All good meetings and all perspectives are welcome. Please feel free to reach out to me, any members of the public that want to have a meeting with me and discuss town operations. Internally, we are getting ready to roll out a survey on communication and how the public prefers to receive town communication and updates. And so look forward to that rolling out here in the next week or so. We're working on putting a project list together that will become our reporting and update to council document to review current projects that are prioritized. And this will allow us to see what projects are in queue. Most of this list will be focused around our capital improvement project list and our maintenance list of projects for public works, as well as the deliverables for the housing element. My goal is to utilize this document to come to council often to update on the projects, and then ultimately to have a state of the town style update to the community as to what the staff is up to. On Wednesday, June 18th, the mayor and I met for the annual breakfast with the fire chief and his management staff at Bucks. This was a great opportunity to discuss fire safety and our goals for vegetation management in the town. It was again brought to our attention by the fire marshal that other communities are utilizing the fire district's vegetation removal team, and that ultimately we're encouraged to look at contracting with the fire district to do so. So you can anticipate that in the future, I will be bringing an opportunity forward to allow us to do more right-of-way maintenance with the fire district labor. I had a meeting with the company Ladris, which was started by my predecessor. This meeting was on 6/18 to go over the evacuation planning modeling the town and fire district have been working on for emergency preparedness. We're reviewing the draft and we'll be bringing that draft forward. Hopefully, I would imagine, I'm looking for clarification, but I would assume to the Emergency Preparedness Committee and then eventually to the town council. We are planning on the e-bike study session on 7/8 council meeting. And finally, on a personal note, I have family in town this Friday, so I will be planning on taking the afternoon off. And I just want to remind everybody that the following Friday is obviously closed for the 4th of July. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Jason? Yep.
Couple questions. Jason, I think you might have had some meetings or communications with Waymo recently. And I was wondering are you at a position to update the council and the town on how Waymo might be operating within the town boundaries now or in the future?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Wall. So ultimately, I've made contact with Waymo. Councilmember Brown and I discussed Waymo, and he had been actually able to tour inside of one of the driverless taxis, I guess is what they are. And then ultimately, you had interest recently, and so I did reach out to Waymo through the contacts from Councilmember Brown, and we have a meeting scheduled. I believe it's either at the tail end of this week or next week, and so I will be able to give an update to the town council at the following meeting on 7/8 as to what their expansion plans look like and whether or not they will be expanding into Woodside anytime soon.
Great. And then separately, I was curious, I'd love to hear that we're going to be doing a survey on town communication. Can you tell us a little bit more about like how you're going to run that survey, what survey tool you're going to be using, and whether or not you have any metrics for what level of response we might want? Just curious to learn more.
Yeah, and I may defer to Melissa here, but Melissa, please chime in after this is sitting through a meeting with Brandy and Melissa on this. It appears to me that we're using SurveyMonkey, and we plan on rolling this out through our communication channels that we currently have, which would be Nextdoor and ultimately any of the other social networks that we utilize, and then having it in our newsletter that's coming up in July. But other than that, Melissa, if you can chime in on any of the other deliverables we discussed.
Sure. We'll also do a townwide postcard to make sure that it goes to the residents' homes. And we'll be asking questions on how people receive town news, if they prefer electronic, printed, if they view it in the newspaper, those kinds of questions.
Will you be asking folks about what like the content of communications that they would be interested in receiving?
No, yes, we did have a question about some topics, but let me pull that up and I can tell you.
Okay, thank you.
We also had a question on that note on whether or not people were satisfied with the e-newsletter versus if they wanted the paper newsletter to come back. So there is some questioning on how people desire to get communicated to. That was the very specific one that I remember.
And last question. You talked about putting together a project list document, which sounds really great. Just wanted to understand, like, will that project list document relate back to the town priorities that were established in December, I believe?
They should, and eventually everything should flow all together when we look at the strategic priorities. At this moment, I'm really focused more on what the town is committed to doing. And so I'm just putting together the deliverables from the CIP list, the deliverables from the housing element that are required. There's a number of deliverables there. And then the deliverables that the town employees are currently working on that they have prioritized. And that's just going to be the starting point to come to you and showcase to you. And then ultimately, it's a working document, it's fluid. I would assume that we would make a number of edits with the council based off of the strategic initiatives that were looked at in December. But ultimately, once I get the list compiled, I will then incorporate the strategic initiatives so that they kind of match up with showcasing how the projects fall in line with the direction that the town council gave.
Thank you.
Other questions?
On the the sheriff's office contract, the sheriff clearly has her hands full these days. What would it be, maybe this is for Jean and you, would it be appropriate to just send them a letter saying we would like to extend for 6 months or 12? I mean, 12 months might be pushing it, but 6 months at the current rate, just to make sure that I mean, I know they're not going to yank our coverage, but I mean, just to sort of put a stake in the ground.
I'm getting clarification from the town attorney, and that is a yes. We will do that.
Okay, thank you.
So I know earlier this week, we talked about, was it last week? No, it's all blurring together. I think it was last week, actually. There was some discussion about taking the temporary traffic light off of Old La Honda. And I know we spoke and talked about some concerns that I received from residents on Old La Honda. I wanted to just ask if you have a status update and if what's your thoughts on next steps for figuring out what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up. Ultimately, it was been brought to my attention by the Public Works Director and also by the Finance or Administrative Services Director that we're spending roughly $200,000 a year on having the light in this location, and it's a temporary light. Ultimately, we're at just the scratching the surface stage of investigating the needs of that area. And so ultimately, the Public Works Director, Yaz, set up a meeting that we had today at 4 o'clock with, I think, 4 very key members of that community that wanted to discuss our interest in the possibility of removing the temporary lights, and based not only on that, but on just the fact that we're just at the starting of this idea. We have no intention of removing this without engaging the town council. We're just kind of looking at how can we extend our money further on the roads, knowing that we're currently having this fee associated with our road maintenance money, just losing $200,000. And we need to amplify this issue because ultimately we have a quote that probably has already changed that was $1.2 million to have a permanent light put in, which we can anticipate is more than likely more expensive now. But you can start to do the math to say, well, geez, after 6 years, it would make more sense that we would have done the permanent. And so really just trying to amplify this issue to town council to look at a solution, because we should not continue to do what we're currently doing. If we do want this to be a permanent fixture, then we need to start making plans to put this on the CIP. And so right now, we're just going to continue to engage the community. We're going to continue to engage what the possible solutions look like. And then we will be engaging the council more than likely on strategic planning over this particular issue, but there are no plans at the moment to remove that light. That would be a decision that would come to council ultimately.
Great. Thank you.
And just follow up on your comment about using the fire department for vegetation removal. Thought this was a very insightful moment, and certainly a moment where a new pair of eyes might see a better way forward than what we're doing. Can you give us just a little bit more detail on why that would be to our advantage versus what we're doing today?
Yeah, ultimately, we're a small organization and we have 4 employees that are out there doing manual labor for Public Works with maintenance. And so their effort can only go so far. Our capacity is only so large, and they're doing varied work. And so ultimately, we have a fire district who is already investing in an entire team that is doing vegetation work. They've done spot work for us. They just did some up on Jane Drive near Kite Hill, where we paid out of pocket to have roughly $8,000 worth of vegetation removal done. But Portola Valley is using them specifically on the right of way. And so it would make a lot of sense for us to utilize an organization that is not trying to make money doing the vegetation removal and is really just doing it not only for less expensive than what a private company would do it for, but ultimately they're doing it to the standard of the fire district. And so we would not have to engage the fire district. Ultimately, we can just work with them annually to say, these are the focus areas we want you to work on. These are the hours that we're paying to do this type of work. And then we could be guaranteed that we would get brush removal done to a standard and laddered fuels removal done to the standard of the fire district in order to mitigate the hazard moving forward.
It's great. No profit margin to pay. And one last one on the San Mateo County Sheriff's. Any value in us reaching out to the Board of Supervisors on this issue of not being able to get any response from the sheriffs on our contract? Or premature relative to the letter idea that was just thrown out?
Yeah, I think the letter is a great idea. I don't think it's a bad idea to just kind of let the supervisor in our district know that we're having this issue. And another alternative is I think that we don't necessarily need whoever is in the role of the sheriff. I think we really just need somebody in the role of the finance director for the sheriff, ultimately, or someone within that office. So that's another alternative that I'm going to email over to them, that ultimately maybe we can just be working with some administrative staff because they're the ones ultimately that understand the ins and outs of the revenues and the costs of their department. So, but I think it is worthwhile at this point to at least alert the supervisor within our district that we're having this issue.
Will do.
As I recall, didn't Portola Valley renegotiate their deal like 6 months ago? And if so, we might contact Portola Valley and say, who did you talk to? to get their attention?
That's a great point. I do have a meeting scheduled, and I'm sorry, it's all blending into one long day, but it's either later this week or next week where I'm meeting the interim for Portola Valley and the assistant town manager for Portola Valley, so I can bring up this very issue at that meeting.
Yes.
Could I just point out on that one? I think it's actually, I mean, I appreciate the comments that are here. If we could get an extension, that would be the ideal without renegotiating, because if we push it too hard, we're going to have a price increase. So I think it's really in our interest to just say, if we could extend it, I mean, ideally, I'd love to extend it for years, but they're not going to want to do that. But if we could get 6 months to a year, I'd be pretty happy. And I wouldn't even push it, just saying we're assuming that we're just going to extend it at this point, unless we hear otherwise. So we at least ensure ourselves of coverage at the same price.
I like that strategy, Councilmember Gold, because I also think that that will bring them to the negotiating table much quicker when we're advocating.
Yeah, but I don't want to get to the negotiating table. I just want to extend. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You got this, I know.
All right. That was the most engaged town manager report in a long time. So thanks for hanging in there. We'll move on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent are considered routine and will be approved with one roll call motion unless a request is made at the beginning of the meeting that an item be withdrawn or transferred to the regular agenda. Are there any items on the consent that any member of the council would like to pull? All right, I'll pull 5. Anything else? Yeah, I thought so too, but okay. Well, can I get an approval on items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8?
7, and 8. Make the motion.
Second it?
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes, and I'm just pulling this item. It's just interesting because it's an approval for a change in the budget that we're going to approve later around some overage on the road rehabilitation contract. So I'm just pulling it because just wanted to make sure the council remains committed to doing the same number of roads that it has done every year. But also to ask about funding. Where does the money come from? Does this impact our surplus or deficit in any way in the coming year?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is once again Jason Ledbetter, the town manager. And so ultimately on this item, we had quotes go out. So this is for the maintenance, the general maintenance of roads, which are generally micro seals that we do here in Woodside. And so annually, we're constantly doing roughly the same volume of road and or square footage. And so the quotes that came back on that year over year similar square footage, they came back 27 or 32% over what we normally spend. And so so obviously the Public Works Director advocated for an increase or brought this to my attention, and I advocated that we increase the funding because for me personally, it's a lot easier to maintain something than it is to rehabilitate or have to completely rebuild something. And so and roads are extremely important here in Woodside. Ultimately, we only have a few for ingress and egress to get out of the community for emergency preparedness. And so we need to make sure that we're maintaining our roads at a high level, which I think that our Public Works Director and the Public Works Directors in the past have done. And so ultimately, in order to continue that tradition, I had advocated to find more money to compensate this fund because this is also the fund that would take care of issues such as the no-name road that's having drainage issues. And so we have a number of one-off $20,000, $30,000 projects that are not CIP. And so we know we need extra money in that fund in order to continue to meet the standard of this community. And so going to the finance director, she had a great idea to utilize Measure A funding that we were not currently utilizing in this fiscal year. And so it becomes net neutral by transferring $200,000 from Measure A into this budget, and we're not taking monies from some other location. And so we wanted to call this out specifically to you guys because when we do get to the budget item, what you'll find is that we only made the change that was requested, and then we're advocating to make this change. And so we just wanted to make sure that we called this item out to you.
Thank you so much. No further questions. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, on the road rehabilitation projects, we have a habit of going over the original estimates, and even the commitments that were given to us in the estimates. And I'm wondering, is there a strategy we can use going forward to negotiate that says not to exceed, period? We're not gonna accept anything unless we specifically ask for a change order. And I'd like to see if we can start executing something that gets tougher on not going over. In almost every single project, we're going over, not just a couple thousand, but 10, 20, couple $100,000 over.
Yeah, that's a great point, Councilmember Brown, and something that's very eye-opening when you get into government contracting is you find out in a lot of public works projects that you're mandated to take the lowest bid. And then you take the lowest bid and you go do your project, and then there's 1,000 change orders, and all of a sudden it's not the lowest bid anymore. And so ultimately, I think the safeguards really happen on the front end with the RFP process and really managing, calling the reference checks, finding out if the work is getting done by that contractor that we want to choose, if it's getting done with change orders. And so I would say, but I'm going to kick it over to Yaz to kind of chime in on this, but my take would be we need to manage the front end on our expectation when we choose the contractor, and we should be choosing a contractor that we believe is going to meet the standard of the town and stay within the budget. And so doing it on the front end would be extremely important. But do you have anything else to add? Yes?
Sure. Thank you very much. And all of our contracts, especially the road rehab, are not to exceed fees. And the only change orders would occur if we asked the contractor to do something extra, because all the work is pretty well defined, and we sit down with them at a pre-construction meeting and go over the extent. So that would be the only time that on these types of projects, something would have to be exceeded. They're all fixed fee contracts. And we will obviously strive, as Jason said, to make sure that we're doing good project management and these don't go over.
So what you seem to be saying is that it all starts with what we assume we're gonna need to do, and make sure that we cover all bases when we go out for quote.
Yeah, we have specs that we put together that outline the work that needs to be done. So these projects are pretty much always done within the budget that we've prescribed. The only times on these types of projects, on annual road rehab, which is really microsurfacing, is that if we run into bad weather, if we have rain delays, and those are, out of our control. So then that would trigger the contractor asking for more monies to keep their staff mobilized, as opposed to pull them in someplace else. But under normal conditions, we don't really go over contract on these types of projects.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I will motion to approve consent item 5, even though it alters item B, but we'll get to that later when we get to the budget. So I motion to approve consent 5.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Alberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes,
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. Okay, moving on to old business A, receiving a quarterly report on automated license plate readers. Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this evening, we should have representation online from the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, who is going to go over the audit that is prescribed by our internal policy over the ALPR system that we're utilizing. And so I'll go ahead and kick it over to Melissa to introduce this gentleman.
Thank you, Jason. Sergeant Baragno is here this evening, as Sergeant Taylor is unavailable to attend. And he will go over any of the questions that the council has on the audit that was conducted. Per our policy, the sheriff randomly selects at least 10 audit browsing inquiries to audit, and that is what is in the memo that is attached from the sheriff's office. And we can answer any questions staff can, and Sergeant Baragno as well. So.
Well, wonderful. Welcome, Sergeant. I think that's the report. We're just going to jump right in. Okay. Questions for the sheriff? Jen, I'm going to lean back now. Enjoy.
Sorry, good evening. I was having some audio difficulties here, but can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hi, Sergeant
Okay.
Brano.
Hi, thank you.
Councilmember
Thank you.
Wall, nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me this evening.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
being here tonight.
So Sergeant Taylor prepared this report. Unfortunately, he's not going to wasn't able to be here this evening. But like the report states, an audit of 10 random searches were conducted, and the reason that is they all fall within the town of Woodside's policies.
Well, thank you so much for preparing that audit. I have a couple questions I was hoping to ask you this evening. Maybe taking a step back from the searches that were conducted this quarter, like in the report that you guys provided. Is it your sense that the sheriff's office is in compliance with the town of Woodside's policy around ALPR or data usage?
Yes, very much so. The sheriff's office policy is actually pretty much directly in line with the town of Woodside's policy. As far as the requirements, the sharing of data with other state and local agencies, it matches up as far as the search criteria and what the audit shows here is the requirement of the user, the organization, and also the reason for the search.
One of the aspects of the town of Woodside ALPR policy is around requisite training. And it talks about the training and education that the sheriff will conduct before accessing the town ALPR data. So can you just maybe describe for us what training is done before sheriff's deputies are allowed to access the data?
Yes, it's part of the training is reviewing the policy and acknowledging the policy, which allows anyone to access the portal in this situation to conduct the searches. The training on the actual software itself is typically done in-house through our FTO program, where field training officers are teaching the new trainees how to utilize it, or if it's done at briefing training. Our vehicle theft task force is kind of the lead on it, and they'll routinely go to briefing trainings and update trainings and different options that the system has.
Okay, that's really good to hear. So it sounds like the sheriff deputies are being asked to review and acknowledge the town of Woodside ALPR policy.
Not the town of Woodside ALPR policy specifically. They're required to review the sheriff's office policy and acknowledge that through our Lexipol database.
Okay, maybe just quickly over to Jean. I believe that there's a requirement in our town of Woodside policy that the sheriff's office provides requisite training on Woodside's policy. Is that right?
Yes, and we can follow up with the sheriff's office. I think I heard him say that in his opinion, our policy was in alignment with the sheriff's policy, and we can check and make sure that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for following up on that. So, Sheriff Barado, putting aside the question of whether or not the sheriff's office is reviewing and acknowledging the town of Woodside policy, would you guys be able to provide those acknowledgements and training records to the town so that we could review those?
I would have to get with our training department as far as I don't have access to the Lexipol, the Lexipol acknowledgements, or how they come out yearly or depending on the requirements by the state as far as acknowledgement and rereading them. But those are all logged and tracked. But I don't have access to that. I could look into getting you an answer on that ability.
Okay, thank you. The policy also talks about the authorized purposes and prohibited uses of the ALPR data, and the ALPR data is defined specifically as the town of Woodside ALPR data. So would you be able to confirm that the ALPR data, which again is the ALPR data that's collected within Woodside and captured by our town ALPRs, is only used for the authorized purposes that are listed in the town of Woodside policy?
The town of Woodside's policy is matches up with the sheriff's office policy as far as utilizing it for violent crimes, locating suspects, missing persons, um, and so forth. The requirements are pretty much one and the same as far as the sheriff's office policy and the town of Woodside's policy to utilize the data.
Gotcha. And in terms of like, assuming that that's the case, how would you be able to demonstrate in a written form that the data is only used for authorized purposes?
If I think I'm sorry, if I'm hearing the question correctly, as far as a report from the sheriff's office to document to the town as far as how we're utilizing it, is
Correct.
that okay? Um, yeah, I would be. I'd have to consult kind of with Sergeant Taylor on that a little bit more because he's as far as the reporting aspects of the system, he's a lot more familiar with that. But I would imagine it'd be very similar to this audit that you have in front of you yourself, just on a larger pool as far as what was searched, how it was searched, and the reasoning for it.
Okay. Would you mind following up on that for us?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Maybe sticking on the topic of data storage and moving into the data storage and protection topic, which just relates to section 4 of our town policy. It's the policy of the town of Woodside that its ALPR data cannot be downloaded to a local server or stored locally on a hard drive or a portable device or produced in a physical printout, except by authorized sheriff personnel who are allowed to download Woodside's ALPR data for local storage or printout for authorized purposes. Would there be a mechanism within your office to demonstrate compliance with that part of our policy?
To my understanding, Sergeant Taylor is the listed and only user listed admin person for that data. So he would be the only one that would be able to demonstrate it, kind of how it works. Like I said, even myself as a sergeant, I don't have access directly solely to Woodside's data. I only have access to it as far as the standard search that every other agency has.
Sorry, can you say that again? So only sheriff, what was his name?
Sergeant Pat Taylor. He's the current listed administrator for the town of Woodside. He's the only one that has access to it.
So Sergeant Taylor would be the only one able to download the data to a local server, store it locally, or store it on a portable device?
Yeah, the raw search data, yes. A specific plate, if it was searched by me if I was investigating a crime and I had a suspect vehicle, and I searched a plate and it hit utilizing one of the Woodside cameras, I'd be able to print off or download the data sheet specifically for that hit itself, but it wouldn't be stored to anything. And that data sheet's typically utilized as evidence that's passed on to the district attorney or as far as the filing of the case.
I'm guessing you wouldn't be able to say yes or no, one way or the other, whether or not Sheriff Taylor has downloaded the ALPR data to storage or a portable device.
I wouldn't be able to.
That's something that I imagine the sheriff's office would be able to demonstrate through documentation of showing the download history or other attributes of downloads to demonstrate whether or not that has occurred.
Yeah, I believe just the way this audit was conducted, there's typically a running log on all the systems as far as plate searches, downloads, and what's conducted on it. So I would have to consult with Sergeant Taylor for the specifics of it that's available, but he'd be the
So
main
I think
contact.
I'm gonna maybe, I could keep going with this line of questioning, but I think maybe question over to Jason and maybe Jean is, and we talked before the meeting, I think, I'll phrase this as a question. I think I would like to see a better demonstration of compliance with our policy. And I think there's work, and we discussed this, there's additional work to be done to show that our ALPR data is being used in compliance with our policy. I think, you know, the sheriff showing up and running this audit is a nice step in the right direction, but doesn't actually demonstrate compliance. And so I guess my question is, is that something that you guys will be doing and can then come to a future meeting and demonstrate with kind of documentation that our policy is being complied with?
I think the answer is yes.
Fantastic. Okay, no further questions for the sergeant. I do have some questions, I think, for Jean. So Jean, we had an email exchange earlier today in response to an email and an article that Hassan, who's sitting here tonight, sent over to the council. And it related to some disturbing news reports that sheriff's offices had been illegally and inappropriately sharing ALPR data with federal agencies like ICE. That is clearly prohibited by our town ALPR policy. Would you agree that that's a prohibited use of our town ALPR data?
Yes, that is the prohibited use, and there's an attorney general's, a state attorney general enforcement bulletin that was issued 2 years ago, which makes it very clear that is just to be for state and local, no other agencies entitled to access.
And then I think I know the answer to this question, but Jason, as the custodian of this policy, are you able to say tonight, confirm that our ALPR data has not been shared with federal agencies like ICE?
No, unfortunately, not being a law enforcement officer, I don't have access to the same data. So I think working with the sergeant that we have here this evening, and then ultimately it sounds like when Sergeant Pat Taylor is back to full duty, I think we will sit down and look for demonstrable ways to show compliance to these very questions that you're asking.
Sergeant, I misspoke. I actually do have another question for you. Are you able to say this evening, confirm that the town, like, so the data that is collected within the town of Woodside by the flock cameras, are you able to confirm that our town ALPR data has absolutely not been shared with federal agencies like ICE?
I can confirm that the searchable data itself is restricted only to in-state agencies. I know it's against the sheriff's office policy to share anything with ICE or federal agencies, which we are in compliance with. Outside of anyone that from another state agency that would be utilizing the data or a search, if they were to share it, they would be out of compliance with their agency and the state mandate, which would cause ramifications for their agency and themselves.
Okay. So it sounds like you're not quite able to give a yes or no question, to give a yes or no answer.
I can confirm with the sheriff's office usage of it, that it has not been shared with any federal agency because it's outside of our policy.
Yeah, we would love confirmation of that. Thank you. And then back to Jean, if the policy were to have been violated in this way, if ALPR data had been inappropriately shared with a federal agency like ICE, what would be our remedies against the sheriff and or flock?
Well, I don't think our remedy would be against flock. I think our remedy would be against the sheriff if the sheriff were utilizing it in a way that's not authorized under the policy.
And do you know what that remedy could be?
Well, it would be a breach of our agreement with the sheriff's office.
And would we have damages, or what, I mean, what would that breach of contract action look like in terms of remedies?
I think that's really driven by the facts that would exist at the time. So all I can really say is it would, if indeed there were a violation of our policy, that would constitute a breach of our agreement with the sheriff's office.
Okay, and if that had occurred, would anyone have a cause of action against the town?
Sheriff's office is required to indemnify and defend the town.
So someone could have a cause of action against the town.
They could have a cause of action, but the sheriff's office is required to indemnify and defend.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Yeah, go for it, Councilmember Harish.
Good evening. Thank you for being here and for your time this evening, Sergeant Moreno. I wanted to say thank you for everything you do in our community first. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to ask, out of curiosity, do you know if the system is able to identify if a license plate does not match the vehicle that it's on? Like, is that something that the system can do?
Yes, yes and no. It typically will get alerted to when a stolen plate's taken off a car. The report's been filed. It gets entered into a database. Part of the alert system on utilizing Flock or ALPR systems is different settings, and you can notify for a stolen vehicle, you can notify for a missing person, or you can even notify for a license plate that's been reported stolen. That would be the only way to truly know that or get an alert on the Flock system if a plate has been switched.
Do you know if our settings are for our town, if they include that?
The settings for the town include, as far as my knowledge, it's just all reads. The alert system is set up by specific users. So a user, say myself in a patrol vehicle, I could select to only get alerted to stolen vehicles, or I can get alerted to select an alert to get alerted to on license plates or in different searches. So that part is up to the specific user as far as the settings for the alert.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Great. Other questions?
Just a quick question for the sergeant. Is the, it appears to me just anecdotally that our residential burglaries have gone down since we instituted ALPRs. That could be for a variety of reasons, including the pandemic and the economy and lots of other things. What is the general sentiment of your detectives who are on those particular assignments?
Yeah, I could. Well, I could speak. I'm not familiar with the current stats right now specifically, but I can also speak from. I was a detective for 6 years prior to promoting to sergeant and working on patrol. The ALPR system is a huge tool and asset as far as solving crimes, stopping them before they are even committed in some cases, but also locating missing persons, which we utilize it a lot. But the current detective bureau and the resources that we have now, I patrol Millbrae, and the notifications that we get for vehicles coming in and utilizing the airport and the stolen vehicles at the airport is quite frequent, and we're able to get ahead of a lot of in-progress crimes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think with that, we will move on and open up public comment. Any members of the public that would like to speak? Hi, San. Welcome to the mic.
Hi, Mayor. I know you guys are dying to see me about this one, but I'll be here every time. I will withhold my complaints about the system for the next time you guys negotiate the contract. I will add a couple anecdotes to the email I sent. So I appreciate the sergeant giving the attesting that they have a compliance policy, but pulling 10 pieces out of however many searches and saying they're all good is window dressing. So we'll leave that to the side. I'm pretty sure that the Attorney General's directive that the Southern California sheriffs couldn't share it either was in place, and they still violated that one. So that's something to think about. We're creating data we shouldn't be creating. I'm going to say this every single time. And we're in a world now where masked men who won't identify themselves and walk around with assault rifles and get out of cars with tinted windows are kidnapping people. We don't want to be helping them. I hope we don't. I guarantee you, there's people who work here every day who they want to go chase. I don't think we want them getting chased here. So again, we're creating data we shouldn't be creating. We'll leave that to the side. Flock is an awful company. They just raised another $275 million despite having $300 million a year in revenue now. So you tell me what they're trying to do with that. I don't know. I don't think they're a good company. The last two pieces I will add. Why does Redwood City, and I forget the other agency, why do they have access to our data is number one. And number two, and that's on our transparency portal. That's what it says. San Mateo County Sheriff's, Redwood City, and I apologize for getting the last one. And then I asked this question last time and it was dismissed, unfortunately. I'm going to keep asking it. How do we know where the data goes once a partner agency asks for it? Once it's generated and downloaded and it goes to, what's the guy in LA County down there who's a constitutional sheriff type and anybody else. And then it goes to ICE and then it goes to CBP. The data is, you guys are watching this AI revolution happen right down the road. The stuff they're doing with it is terrifying. And now we are using town money to generate a database on ourselves on a daily basis. It catches all of our plates. I have nothing to hide. I don't want that data to exist. So again, don't generate the data. How do we guarantee sharing doesn't go beyond our policies? And why do other police agencies that we don't have jurisdiction over have access to our data now? Thank you very much.
Son, maybe we could just get two follow-ups on that, Sergeant. What does our policy actually say about sharing data? And then secondly, do you have any color on what happens to the data once another agency gets a hold of it, if it's requested by them?
I think also maybe answering why Redwood City PD and the other PD are listed as having conducted searches on the data.
So I guess we're talking about data's, I guess, in two different aspects here. We have the actual, I guess you can call it the database that has all the reads. That a user on the law enforcement side, other than, I would assume, an admin, doesn't have access to all that. We only have access to the specific plate that we're searching for. And that's what the specific reasoning is for. I can't just go in there and search, all on any plates. I need to have a specific reason for a specific plate to search. And I apologize, the second part of your question, as far as Redwood City, and I believe the report also shows Redwood City and San Mateo PD utilized, they searched for a specific plate that for their reasoning that was listed on the audit, and that plate hit off of one of the flock cameras in Woodside. So that's why that report was generated, and that's why you see that in the audit. Is they didn't search specifically Woodside cameras, they searched for the plate, and that plate hit in Woodside for whatever reason, and that's why the search was completed that way.
If I may, so Hassan, I think your questions are really valid, and I'll say this gets really complicated really fast because we have the town of Woodside policy, which defines our ALPR data in a certain way, and that is defined by the data that's collected in Woodside by the Woodside cameras. Then it gets filtered through the Flock system and then to the sheriff's office who have authorized users. I think the answer to your question is that according to Section 8 of our policy, the sheriff is authorized to share town of Woodside ALPR data in limited circumstances upon a lawful request with 3 different entities: a district attorney's office, a public defender's office, and a California law enforcement agency. And I think the 2 police departments that you asked about, in my mind, would be considered a California law enforcement agency. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah.
So this might just be the way the website is set up, but I'm pretty sure on the website, it doesn't say people who use it. It says authorized accessors or something. I can look it up right now on my phone, but it's not just they did a search. This also says that our data is now tied into the whole Flock system that San Mateo County is using, which means we're just part of a giant tracking system. I thought it was supposed to be, we have Woodside data used for Woodside issues, because when it was first brought up, this was a, Woodside's having break-ins, people are scared, we need to protect them. We're just part of a big tracking system. And I will repeat,
It's not true.
that's
not
what,
true.
how did Redwood City get it? It's part
We'll
of a
talk
big,
about it.
that's fine.
Yeah,
that's
when we
fine.
get to
I won't,
That's
sorry for
not the
debating.
case.
I still don't have a good answer to if the LA County Sheriff, who's a California sheriff, asks for the data and says, oh, I'm doing an investigation, and then turns around and gives it to ICE. There's nothing in our policy that protects against that. And I don't think that sheriff's even liable. I doubt they sign anything to get our data. It's just a lawful request, which I assume is a pretty vague term, honestly.
That is true.
So again, this, you're creating data, to your point, is very complicated and is just going to spider out in all these directions. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Just a point of order, we're going to be doing public comment for 3 minutes and not acknowledging a second turn at the mic tonight. Other public comment, we had a hand in the Zoom room. Do we still have somebody that would like to speak? Okay. Any other members that have not spoken in the public in the room? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, move to deliberations. Anybody like to
Hand.
kick things off?
Sorry,
Yeah.
that came back.
Oh, we have somebody come back. I will recognize Christine. You're on mute. There you go.
I guess I'm now usurping my wife's account.
Ah, you're back, David. Hello.
Thank you, Mayor Domkowski, for recognizing me. I'm having technical difficulties tonight. And thank you, Sergeant, for your service. I had a couple thoughts and a couple questions. Looking at the audit sample, the reasons are very non-descriptive. It obviously looks like case numbers, but having more descriptive notes associated with an access record could improve the effectiveness of an independent audit. For example, it might be possible to export the search terms used in the search to see exactly how the data was accessed. I can't remember while I was present for the meeting that we discussed the original contract, I can't remember the specifics in terms of how long the entire access logs are kept and if the town keeps an independent copy of those access logs. I do think it is something that the town should entertain in terms of keeping an independent copy of the access logs for a third-party audit. And one other thought, there are ways to secure the access to the data more restrictively than it is now. When we spun up this system, we chose to integrate it into those larger search systems, but we could go back to having an air gap system that doesn't talk to other departments through the convenience of that portal and potentially restricting access to our physical terminal in town hall if we were severely concerned about data security. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Middleton. Ms. Belletti, please.
I just want to confirm, we will be having a public hearing on item B.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get there. Okay, we will close public comment now and move on to deliberations. Does any member of the council would like to deliberate further?
Yes. So I feel like I've been really consistent on my views and commentary on ALPRs from the very beginning. I was a yes vote, but with that yes vote comes, I take the compliance with our policy really seriously, because these ALPR cameras, as Asan has rightly pointed out, are capturing vast amounts of data and then sharing that data with the government. And I really, really support our sheriff's office, and I really appreciate the work that you do. But receiving that data and using that data for investigatory purposes, for prosecutions, etc., is a huge responsibility. And so my expectation is that the sheriffs that come to do the quarterly ALPL quarterly report, not just go through the motions of saying, oh, we picked 10 searches, like, yeah, we think it complies. I expect a whole lot more rigor to the quarterly reports. And I want the sheriff's department to be able to stand up and say, with absolute certainty, we comply with the town of Woodside policy for ALPRs. And the policy is specific to Woodside. It's not enough for me to hear, oh, it's mostly the same as some other policy. Like, no, like we spent a lot of time coming up with our policy, and it's incredibly important that we are able to make representations to our residents that the policy is being complied with. And I have the same expectation of our town manager. And I know, Jason, you're brand new to this role, so this is like on a going forward basis, and we've already discussed this. We need to be able to demonstrate that the policy is being complied with. And in my mind, demonstrating that involves more than just bringing a sergeant to a meeting and saying, who's able to say, yeah, it's being complied with. It actually involves obtaining documentation and reports and written proof that the policy is being complied with. And so we are certainly not there. There was a lot of questions tonight that weren't able to be answered. And so I'm really hoping that we can work together, and we've already talked about this, to come up with a format to ask the right questions and ask for the documentation that'll be able to demonstrate compliance. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think we're not in a good place right now because we're not able to say that the policy's being used in a compliant, or that the data is being used in a compliant manner.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I guess I'm confused. I did listen to a report of how the sheriff's department was performing in their audits. And now we're talking about ICE and getting way off track. We bought into the concept of Flock on the idea that it is an effective vehicle to catch the bad guys who would come to Woodside, commit a crime, and are exit Woodside and can be identified and then caught someplace else in the community. The rest of the community that has no idea that we've got this guy's license plate. What's the point? Of course, they're going to be sharing data. The whole point is to share data for California law enforcement. So I don't know why we're renegotiating this. If we want to renegotiate the whole Flock contract, let's do that on a separate meeting. But I think to ask the sheriff department to go through a line by line minutia report in order every quarter to justify what we believe that they're responsible to do, responsible enough to do properly, I think it's going too far.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other thoughts? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
So this is, I'm sympathetic to the things I heard. I just wanted to sort of mention some of the things. I was involved in this very early on before I joined the council because residential burglaries were such a big issue where I live a lot. I mean, they were happening very frequently, and I had met with Matt Fox, and I met with Mark Myers, and had separate meetings, and we had workshops in this room, and I met with folks from Hillsborough and Redwood City and all over the place, and did a lot of research into ALPRs. This has gone from a 50-50 issue. Asan will remember this. When we first came in this room and talked about it, half the room liked it and half the room were against it. The last time we did it was a 90-10 issue. In fact, you may have been the only person who spoke against it, I think, at the time. God bless you for doing it. But and I respect that more than you'll know. But it's really switched because the results have been pretty dramatic. The point is not if they're in compliance with our policy. The point is if they're in compliance with their contract. They're doing what we asked them to do. They're not going through our papers and saying, well, you intended this and no, we told them do 10 random checks. That was us. That was our markup to the contract. They did 10. You want them to do 20? They'll 20. You want them to do all of it? They'll do all of it. They're supposed to be in compliance with what we asked them to do, and they are. So I wanted to mention a couple of other things. This came up during public comment. they can share data with other agencies within the state of California, and they are. That would include the LA County Sheriff. That would include, San Francisco Police Department. That would include a lot of certainly the district attorney in San Mateo County, et cetera. You're absolutely correct that we don't know what they do with the data after that. But that's not in our contract. That's not part of our contract. That's not in there. It doesn't say that we have to have LA County certify that they're not going to do it. We have to certify that San Mateo County Sheriff's Department certifies that they're in compliance with it. So that would be my primary point. But there are some secondary points here which are very, very important. It was brought up about, this is not Woodside's camera system exclusive for Woodside and that we're only concerned with crime here. It was explained by the Flock people, who, by the way, I'm not particularly fond of, and our own sheriff's executive, the captains at the time, that the way the system works is it's all tied in. We talked about that. And we will catch in Woodside some criminal from Manteca when he drives through or she drives through. That's the whole intent of the system. It's not to say, gee, somebody robs a house in Woodside and we got to catch him in Woodside. We might catch him in Redwood City. We might catch them in San Jose and vice versa. We might catch somebody from San Bernardino as they, cut through our town. So that's the way the system is supposed to work. It's not exclusive to Woodside either in the definition of the crime or the assailant or the definition of, finding it. What are we going to do? Ignore somebody when they drive through our town if we get a hit on the AOPR? One of the safeguards that we demanded was that whoever, and maybe the sergeant can just verify this, whoever, I remember Detective, I'm blanking on his name, it's an Italian name, but sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But a detective who came in and he said, every time we access the system, we have to put in our name, we have to put in why we're doing it and what the case number is. And so there is some documentation, some stream. And in fact, he made the example, I remember to this day, he said, I can't plug in Taylor Swift and find out where she's driving around town. I can't, if I do that, I'm going to get caught. So I have to put in that there was a residential burglary on Woodside Road at the, whatever it was, and this was the case number. So there's some traceability to it. I thought that was a pretty tight system, and that's what they're auditing. They're auditing 10 of those at random. If we want them to audit all of them at random, all of them, we can demand that too. But as far as I know, they're in compliance now because they did the 10. So I just, I think if we want to change it, we're about to renegotiate the sheriff's contract. If we want to demand that they don't share agencies, they may not be able. Something. The town of Woodside, which accounts for 1/900th of our budget, is demanding that you don't share this information with other agencies outside of the state of California. I think it's actually a state law. Mistaken. So the article, we can't enforce that. I can't make the LA County Sheriff not share with ICE if that's what they do. By the way, they weren't one of the agencies it was named. And importantly, in the article that you sent, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office was not named either. So I think that there's a lot of good things going on. I find they're in compliance with our contract, the demands we made of them. They're not meant to be in compliance with our policy. I've seen nothing that says they're keeping data longer than they should, that they're sharing data inappropriately, that they're accessing it inappropriately. We asked them to do in the contract. The town, and if that's the wishes of the town and the town council, we should do it. But right now, I find them in complete compliance.
Just maybe a follow-up question. Jean, does the sheriff have to be in compliance with our town ALPR policy?
Yes, and I think they are from what we've heard this evening. Yes.
But they are required to be in compliance.
Yes.
Councilmember Aberish, anything you want to throw into the mix tonight? This?
Um, so, you know, I understand that there's certain protections in place that the data is deleted after a certain amount of time. And I think it's important. I think it's really important to have those protections in place. You know, I also, and I think it's good to have, you know, someone confirm and come and talk about it. I also personally have an issue with, you know, too much bureaucracy and too much auditing and too much, you know, where I imagine that, you know, whoever's preparing these reports and attending these meetings, they have a lot of demands, and I'm sure that there's quite a bit. And I feel like it's important to keep in mind that we need to balance it. And, you know, I personally think it's a really important system. I do see the risks, and I appreciate them. I do have concerns with them. But at the end of the day, I think it's more important, you know, if there's criminals coming into Woodside, my personal preference would be for them to be identified and caught. And so, to the extent, you know, we have protections in place and we have somebody confirming that they're being followed, I'm comfortable, you know, keeping the system in place. Or if we want to renegotiate it, I'm open to that too. But that's my take.
Thank you, Councilmember. What to say that hasn't been said? I personally just want these cameras to be as effective as they possibly can be and to augment the work of our sheriffs. We have a very limited budget. This is a great way to help handle public safety. I was really impressed, by the way, I just want to call you out, Councilmember Brown, on your recent seminar on public safety and the two sheriffs that were there that night who gave all those wonderful, excellent examples of all the ways that these cameras are helping solve crime in our area and more broadly. You know, we made the decision to deploy these, and we want them to be as effective as possible. They are designed to be part of a network, and I personally hope that any moment a criminal comes in, I hope there's an alert that goes out to every law enforcement person in the immediate area. That was always part of the program. A stolen car from Woodside pulls into Hillsdale Mall, they can nail them as they pull into Hillsdale Mall. I don't know why we would want it any other way. So I want to thank the Sheriff's Department for their continued work on our behalf. And I want to thank you personally, Sergeant. You know, I don't think you guys get enough personal thanks. And sometimes you don't maybe get the exact representation in your interactions with folks either. And we really appreciate what you do. And so thank you for assembling these quarterly reports and being here tonight. I think with that, are there any further deliberation? We have to accept.
Just accept.
Do we need a vote on that? I think we.
I would suggest you do that, yes.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to accept the quarterly, let me read it.
Quarterly report on automated license plate readers.
Councilmember, would you like to make the motion?
I move that we accept the quarterly report, automated license plate readers.
Second.
Jennifer?
Councilmember Aberish,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing B. We're there, Sue. To adopt the town budget for fiscal 25-26 and adopting salary schedules and so forth. We'll hand it off to you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Woodside Town Council. So ultimately, just a few days before I started, the introduction to this budget was received by the Town Council and my predecessor. And tonight we have the Administrative Services Director to hopefully finish off the presentation for the possible adoption of this budget and a number of documents that go along with adoption of budget. And so I am going to hand this presentation over to the Administrative Services Director, Cindy Safe.
Thank you, Jason. Mayor Domkowski, council members. What we have before us this evening are 3 resolutions. This is what we do normally every year. The first one is the adoption of the town budget for the fiscal year 25-26. And the adoption is by fund, a summary of each of the funds. The second one is the state mandated appropriation limit for next year. And then the third one is to approve the town salary schedule and classification plan, which we have each year, and we use the same factor to increase the lowest and highest salary ranges. So the town council considered this May 13, as Jason said. There was one change made that the council members requested, and that was to eliminate the Woodside Road north side from Kenyatta Corners. So that capital improvement project was taken off. And then when we got the road rehab projection numbers, they were about 200,000 more than what we anticipated. So we've increased the budget this year, 200,000 more, and the place where the funding is going to come from are Measure A funds, which is a San Mateo County transportation fund. And we have enough fund balance there to cover that project for this fiscal year. I attached the CIP budget attachment and then the 3 adopting resolutions. And I ask that you adopt the attached resolutions and provide the formal adoption for this upcoming fiscal year. And I will take any questions. May I do one more thing? May I introduce the interns at the town of Woodside for the summer? Sydney Sasaki, she's a sophomore at Santa Clara. And then we have Dasha Yantas. She's a sophomore at CSM. And they're here this evening observing their first town council meeting.
Wonderful. Welcome. Great summer. Great to have you. Questions for staff? Any questions on the budget from council?
I'd like to comment. I'm glad that you listened to us last time around. Made a few strategic changes to the plan. Open up.
Thank you.
I think we can just read the room that we have no further questions at this point. We'll open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on any items in the budget? Hello, Ms. Paletti.
Hi, I'm Sue Paletti, and I want to be sure that I'm understanding. Item 7 is also 2020, a resolution about the sewer fees. May I speak about that? Is that, I thought that's what item B was?
Let me open up. I'm going to just try to get where you are. What page are you on in the? Oh. You know, though
I came to speak about, I thought the public hearing B was about the 2025 sewer. Have you already approved that without a public hearing?
You know what? That was back in the consent, but I have to say, Jean, I failed to open up public comment on consent agenda items. Can I open that right now?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
And she may speak on that right now.
Thank you, Sue.
I really
didn't realize-
appreciate it. All right.
Sorry
And
about that.
may I get my minutes back?
You absolutely can.
All
Yeah.
right. So you're all aware I own the small building across the street at the corner. It's a 2,700 square foot office building. And we've owned it since 1994. And in 2010, 2011, our property tax bill was, I'm going to round numbers, $11,000. Our sewer was $426. As it progressed, it was $426, $426, $664, $664, $928. And then there was some meeting, and now there were minimums. So it came in at $1,700, $1,100, $1,300, $1,400, $1,600. And then in 2022-23, our property tax bill was $13,220. And our sewer was $14,945. Pat and I about fainted. So we talked to Kevin Bryant, our town manager, and we worked with Nathan G. at the County of San Mateo. And we said, gee, we're coming off of COVID. We've got 3 to 5 people in this office. There are not that many toilets being flushed. 90% of our water is landscaping. And Kevin said, oh, you need to be charged at the minimum. So they put us back at the minimum. The very next year, our property tax was $13,599, and we were assessed sewer at the minimum charge for that year of $17.63. Last year, here we go again, our property tax was $14,000. Our sewer was $16,112. Pat and I again about fainted. Now we had last year 3 to 5 people in the office. And so we spoke with Yaz. He helped us, and you remember that. And we worked with Nathan G. and Kevin Bryant suggested that we take it back to the minimum. So our property tax within a day was revised. Our sewer fee was revised back to the minimum of $17.63, which was actually the year before, but Kevin was generous. And so now it looks like in this new proposal that our sewer will be $18,403.88. We've got, on a good day, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 people in that office. I don't imagine there are that many toilets being flushed. And if I hadn't have noticed that in the meeting, unlike a property I own in another city in South San Francisco, the County of San Mateo, we do get letters advising us of sewer fees. I'm going to go over my time, but my husband did give me his 3 minutes, if you would please allow me. And for instance, I've got a 12,000 square foot building, 4 bathrooms, 15 employees, and $1,400 sewer, not to mention they also wash their cars because they're an auto and they have the public coming in. Now you may say that's apple to oranges. Let's go back to Woodside, which I would say, let's look at the library, let's look at Town Hall. Town Hall has more employees, I believe, than we have in our office. The library entertains a lot of guests. And then I look at the other, in fact, the retail nursery, hair salon at, in the corner here has $1,000 sewer bill, and I guarantee you their toilet flushes in that hair salon more than it does in our little office building. And then the office buildings down the street, they are running at $1,243, $1,096. So I'm really asking your help if we could go back to the minimum charge.
Okay, so I'm unfamiliar with how this works. When
Me too.
someone has a complaint on sewer relative to billing versus usage, and clearly we, I guess, have a history here over the last couple of years of addressing this, and it keeps repeating itself, so I don't know why that would be. But what thoughts? This is out of my league, I guess. How does this work? And
Yeah.
what course does she have?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Jason Ledbetter, the town manager for Woodside. Ms. Paletti, we'd be happy to work with you to analyze why this is happening and get you back to an appropriate scale.
Okay.
This evening, it's not about the fees, unfortunately, though. It's just about giving the authority to the county to do the assessment, to collect the funding.
All right.
But ultimately, I know that we had talked earlier, and you'd mentioned earlier this evening that you are planning some travel soon. So I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
sure if you are available. We can talk after the meeting, and maybe Yaz and I can set up a meeting with you, and then we can investigate why this is
Thank
happening
you so much.
and rectify it.
I
for you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, back to the budget. Public comment on the budget. Hi, welcome back.
Hi, Hassan again. I'll make a quick one. Councilmember Brown, you mentioned cutting the Woodside Road project. I just want to let you guys know, Chair of Circulation Committee, that's a project we do want to work on in the subsequent years. So at some point we will come back with a more detailed proposal. I think it was kind of confused how it was presented. I've talked to the town manager on it already. Anyways, sometime in the future, expect a presentation from us on what the specifics of that plan were, what the challenges are, and what we want to try to improve. So anyways, not relevant tonight, but expect in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Son. We appreciate that. Any other comments on the budget? Members in the Zoom? Seeing no hands up, we'll close that up. Any further deliberation on this issue from the council? Nope. Nope. I think all right, we're deep enough into this one, so I guess we'll entertain a motion on, all right, I don't have it up again. The problem going electronic here, trying to save some paper. Anybody like to call, yes, Councilmember Wall, thank you so much.
Sure. I move to approve 3 resolutions. The first is adopting the town budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026. The second is determining the appropriation limit for fiscal year 2025, 2026. And the third is adopting the salary schedule and classification plan for 2025 and 2026.
Second.
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold, Councilmember Wall, Mayor Domkowski.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to volunteer committee, Melissa?
Yes, that's me. Thank you.
Hi.
Let's see, softball started on Sunday, opening day, and I think it was successful. Jen, your team played on Sunday.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but our team won.
Nice.
I think there's probably a connection between that.
I think we did play. I think Ty and I did play you, maybe. So that's just kicked off for the summer, continues and ends before Labor Day. My apologies, I didn't put together a report too much because some of the committees haven't met due to quorum issues with vacation schedules. So hasn't been a complete schedule. So I don't think I have anything else to add on upcoming events for any of the committees.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions other than understanding what position does Councilmember Wall play on her team?
The position that receives the least action as possible.
There you go, okay. All right, I think we'll just and move on to council communications. Any members of the council want to share anything from the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I attended a ABAG meeting in San Francisco last Friday. And participated as Jonathan Woodside's representative in an organization with 110 votes. So whatever the vote was, one of 110. In the organization, I have a whole report of what ABAG does. I don't know if anybody really has some idea what it is. I'm going to give a copy to Jason. We can make some copies for everybody, because I didn't know what it did. But it basically, they're the people that kind of oversee the allocations for housing. So they're very, 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 very important to us. And it is a committee and a decision made by the joint organization when they allocate by city, what the housing is going to be, the demands are going to be. So it's a group that we need to be at least informed of what they're doing and be able to perhaps connect with other similar towns with similar problems to create a little pressure to do better for the local communities than sometimes we get. They also are responsible for the harbor, managing the harbor maintenance as well as the sea level. They don't get into sea level rise like that other group did. There's another organization that is dealing with sea level rise.
Thank you for attending on our behalf. Very important organization. Other council, yes.
Yeah, just an update on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the town center area plan. Why do I get those backwards all the time?
We're calling it TCAP.
TCAP. Or TCAP. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 10 applicants so far. We're still missing some. We're trying to equal out districts. That was part of the problem. We were trying to make sure that every district was covered. And we are still, so I'm just encouraging if you're, to council members to make sure that they get applicants from their district so we could do that. But we have a pretty nice list of applicants, and I think we'll be meeting next week, I think, to try to come up with a slate to present to the council for their approval at the
July 8th
meeting. So we don't have a lot of time to do it, but I think we'll get it done. And so far we're up to 10. So I think that's a pretty good number, and they look pretty good if I do say so myself.
Well, thank you both for doing that. We wish you great luck and have great trust in the process. Any other comments? Just mention, then to wrap things up, earlier this year, then Town Manager Kevin Bryant and I sat down with Congressman Liccardo, talk about fire prevention and funding and whatnot. In that conversation, he said, hey, I'd love to come speak to the town of Woodside. And his staff just reached out to try to get that on the calendar for July. So we're going to try to do a town hall with our congressman from, well, our congressman
Boy, look at
from our
you.
district.
Wow.
So we'll try to host that and probably have to bring some security in for that, but we'll host it. And we'll get back to everybody in relatively short order once we've had a chance to sort of iron out details on timing and content and so
Have we
forth.
ever had a member of Congress here?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Gene? Did Anna Eshu ever come here?
Turn off my mic.
Yeah.
I think at one of your Council of Cities dinners once you did.
Oh, here.
Yes.
Well, my recollection is she was slated to come to the Council of Cities dinner that Ned had organized, but then that dinner got called off because of the pandemic.
Mm.
And then she did come to the last council meeting where I was mayor last year, coincided with her retirement, and she came virtually
That I remember.
and made some comments. So I think that's in my time on the council, my recollection of Congress member participation here in Woodside.
Rare and certainly going to be rare in person. So we'll see what we can do, but we'll be back to everybody with some details on that shortly.
Very nice.
And I think with that, we will call it at 8:33. Thank you all.
Good meeting.